Button is on, and welcome back, everyone. Today's webinar is really an overview presentation of the technical guide on northern housing. More specifically, as probably many of you that have followed in the past, we did do an earlier series with a number of different presentations on this particular topic, but this is really what I call the update fall 22.
And in particular, we're focusing on the materials we got for Northern Ontario, correct? That's what the slides are on, correct?
Yeah, we're going to focus a little bit on Ontario and kind of, I want to kind of, we'll say, kind of wrap the whole ball together and talk about where we're at, what's been done, and I guess maybe a few things, and that's why I say, John, that I'd like you to
Sure.
input on kind of the status overall.
Okay.
So go ahead. Go ahead, John.
Yeah. Thanks, Claude. So the technical guide on northern housing. So in our conversations with the National Research Council, they reached out to us as part of a building code project and wanted to know what our needs were. And we were, we talked with the National Research Council and CMCC, the Canadian Construction Materials Center, and but more so the NRC. And we said what we really need is specifically a technical guide on how to build houses in the north. So we know that there are building codes and there are standards, but they're only minimum. And how do you build in the north? So the big question is, how do you sustain building in the north? So one of the big issues I remember being in at a meeting for northern housing, they talked about bad windows. And when I asked the gentleman who was actually sort of like doing the tendering, I said, did you, as part of your technical specifications, mention that you want these windows specifically for the north? So, double pane, Aragon filled, or triple, whatever the specifications required for your climate. Did you specify that? And they said no. Well, then, in fact, then you got windows that are sufficient for where Claude lives down in Windsor, and so that's why your windows aren't working, or they fail. So, as part of our conversations, we worked with NRC and we come up with a number of booklets. So we have one booklet, which is on the Yukon. We have another booklet on Northwest Territories, one on Northern BC, Northern Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, the North, which is Nunavut, Labrador, the District of Nunavut, and the Innu area as well as we're focusing on. Now, to date, we have completed the, as part of the Inuit, there's the Inveluk, Nunavut, Nunavut, and Nunavut area. So those are all part of Northern Labrador, Northern Quebec areas, and we come up with 4 specific guides in that area. So to date, we have one done that's we'll be posting is on Northern Ontario, and I believe we're in the finals of another one for the Inuit districts on Nunavut, and that will be coming soon, if not in the next few weeks, hopefully. So as part of the guides, so each one has a whole series of building technical. So one would be booklet 1, site plans and foundations. We'll talk about ventilation of book 2. Book 3, we talk about heating. Book 5, we talk about electrical. Book 6, we focus on water, fresh water. We also focus on wastewater and plumbing. We focus on the elements of the house, and there we look at roof, walls, and floors, doors and windows, structures, interior finishes, and acoustics. And we also focus on fire safety. So each one of those books have a sub areas under each of those areas. So it's a lot of detail, and they're large files. So one of the challenges that we're having is how to post these files that are they're big megs, 365, 356 meg documents. So we're spending time breaking them down, and we're probably post them onto a web cloud for people to download it. So that's what we're working on right now. The problem that we're having is that for the guides for the north, we know that you don't have the broadband as well to download. So these are issues we're trying to manage at this stage. That being said, today's webinar will just give you an update on the overview with, I believe, most of it's coming from Northern Ontario. What's great about what we have to date is that now we have the template, and so all the other regions will be easily to complete. We have the main information, we just have to dovetail it specifically for those regions.
Thank you, John. As John indicated, certainly it's been a long and at times cumbersome project, but certainly a worthwhile project, because as the title indicates, it's a technical guide for northern housing. From my point of view, again, John indicated, I live in the balmy south of Ontario, right across from the city of Detroit, Michigan. But all said, when we start looking at the house construction in typically many communities, it seems to mirror, for the most part, we'll say the southern aspect, trying to import it and rebuild it in the north, which obviously we can see there's not always been success in that particular house building process. But let's get a little bit more into detail and kind of follow up on what John was talking about here. So what will you really take away today is what was completed since fall of 21. John just updated us very nicely on what has happened. Overview of building in remote northern regions. The types of building materials that are used. We're going to talk about selecting proper materials for the northern environment, and certainly that's what these documents do. As John indicated, they're certainly targeted for various regions across Canada, basically from coast to coast to coast. And one of the beauties that you can take away from this, once we have all of these, we'll say, available, readily available, there's some great works that have been done by really Indigenous architects, designers, and planners, certainly when it comes to things such as some of the good examples of plans and designs they've come up with for some of these communities. Now, with that said, we'll get into a little more of the detail of this. Okay, so the latest updates, as John indicated, completion of the Northern Ontario Technical Guide for Northern Housing series. And with all of them, there's always an introduction booklet that kind of gives a little history and background to the community in the area in particular. And there's also another series of booklets called the Introduction Booklet, the Technical Guide, and another one called the Guiding Principles.
If I can interrupt, the reason why we did the introductory booklets is that there are contractors that are interested in providing service to the north, either in terms of construction or shipping materials. And there was a real gap of knowledge. Matter of fact, a very large gap of knowledge on on information such as, diesel generations or diesel generators for electrical, the use of ice roads, building times, using cement in winter time and heating the foundation. So there's a lot of technical construction stuff which we had to include as the introductory book, mainly geared for I would call it the naivety of practitioners that are not in the north.
Yep, very good points. So again, maybe just to kind of give us another overview of the technical guide, the objectives: develop a series of booklets, as John had indicated, that provide technical engineering information on the construction of new houses. Certainly improving northern housing by addressing its broader context, which includes both cultural and administrative government factors. And identify some of the best practices out there in the building of new houses in the north that meet the provisions of the National Building Code. And certainly more recent, certainly a lot of focus on energy codes and other related housing standards. Again, a few more contribute to the current housing construction practices that are unique to communities within the Arctic and subarctic First Nation and Inuit Nunavut regions, provide easy to understand booklets on technical information. So again, without reading too much here, again, these booklets, as John indicated, are broken down into we'll say nice size readable information that isn't going to be like an encyclopedia of information. It can be easily put together if you want, or simply as it being in booklet form, you can kind of pick and choose what really applies for, I guess we could call it, your reading pleasure or for getting technical information. And certainly educate individuals with no northern experience, because as John indicated, sometimes we're going to have practitioners that are going to come in and offer to build, and maybe they're not too experienced with some of the challenges that housing face in the northern climates, we'll say, as opposed to the south. Okay, and help build a common understanding among building officials, chiefs and council, designers, contractors on the specific challenges of new home construction, especially in all those various different communities. I indicate here both northerners and people from outside the northern communities are intended users of this introduction booklet, the overview booklets and the technical booklets that make up the overall guide. Again, the purpose is to give those not familiar with the construction in the north a better understanding of exactly what needs to be done to be considered successful, and certainly the delivery of new housing in the north. Again, there was a few guiding principles that were put together in a booklet under the title, again, Guiding Principles. So they basically rationalize and assess what are some of these guiding principles that should be considered when we look at the overall, we'll call it holistic, logical challenges that should be considered when we talk about Northern Guide and Northern Housing. So here's a list of the 10. So this is really just we'll call it the point form. There are certainly about 16 pages to the guiding principles of the booklet itself. Again, as John alluded to, we try and keep the booklets in a reasonably small, easily readable format. Not too much, we'll call it depth in the technical language, a little bit, but trying to make it just about, we'll call it very easy read for just about anyone. So we can see here some of the key points: durable and robust. What about a backup system? So for example, when we talk about heating, maybe things such as the engineers on the heating side would recommend perhaps a combo oil/wood furnace installation. Are things easily repairable? So the repairability factor. And are they tolerant to installation errors? So again, when we talk about materials, is some flexibility in tolerance levels acceptable? And I guess we could go into what degree. let's keep it simple. It can be performed by even by the local workers. Shouldn't be too complex. And certainly it should be low maintenance, therefore minimal maintenance, and certainly with the view of cost effectiveness. And as I indicated earlier, flexible in design and adjustable to change. As we know, as people age, the house itself needs a review for the changes for the aging of our population. Things such as accessibility and safety within the house, or even access in and out of the house. When it comes to the actual, we'll call it construction, is it shippable and erectable? Could it be modular in design to keep it simpler and maximize the use of, let's say, a sheet of plywood? If we look at things back in the day, we used to talk about modular design with using known sizing, common elements, so there's not a lot of waste factors. So for example, the sheet of plywood is roughly 4 feet wide and 8 feet high. Well, if we can build with those modular standards, if we think about wood studs, 3 studs spaced at 16 inches equal 48 inches. So again, looking at cutting down waste factors and certainly the suitability for the community. Of course, another real key factor is job, is it going to be properly done? So the key factors certainly to reduce low quality and hopefully end up with what we would call the better builds. And of course, safety is a big one for everyone, be it the builder, be it the people living in the house, and certainly safe even within the community. Next, I'm going to show you a few of the covers, and basically I'm not going to get into a lot of detail because each one of these are approximately, I'll say maybe the smaller ones, 10 upwards to 20 pages of information. But we can see there's an overview booklet of Northern Ontario, which basically gets into the cultural, the background, and a lot of the history of, we'll call it northern housing in Northern Ontario. We can see here in the next one, booklet number 1, site planning and foundation. So this particular booklet details specifically with site planning and foundations. You can see there's a little, again, graphic representation representing the northern part of the province of Ontario, tailored for remote Northern Ontario communities. If we look at booklet 2, it encompasses the issues of ventilation. Again, I like to talk about building science, but certainly one of the key factors of building science is houses need to breathe and we need good ventilation. So this booklet certainly deals with the issues of ventilation, good ventilation systems for northern housing. The third booklet talks about heating, so heating systems. So again, each of these booklets broken down to more of a system-based approach, uniformly actually spread across all these booklets that are being created for all the various regions. I think we're going to have a great encyclopedia, so to speak, of all these booklets that can be, like I say, taken apart individually, or as one big large collective for the area, or as one needs to read that particular area of interest for them. Booklet 4 is on electrical, 5 is on fresh water, 6 is on wastewater, and 7 is on wall, roofs, and floors. And just to move on, there's booklet 8 on windows and doors, 9 is on structure, 10 is on acoustics, and 11 is on fire safety. Again, what you will find, there's uniformity no matter what particular region you want to look at, that we try to keep these in sort of the same type of, we'll say it, format and system. So again, these are simply just the cover pages of the particular booklets. Certainly, like I say, there's a lot of detailed information contained within each of the booklets. I think in the past, I did a sort of a short mini series for a number of webinars, just talking about each one of these. So for example, I could do a whole session on just structures alone, or just windows and doors. So again, these are all very important, good information, you know, put together by architects, engineers, and certainly a panel of experts in the field that are looking to create these guides for better builds for northern housing. A couple of the other booklets that John was talking about also is the introduction booklet, a technical guide for northern housing. So this provides a more globalistic overview, as I indicated, from coast to coast to coast, talking about the guides, how to use them, and certainly some of the problems and issues facing northern housing. And again, we saw earlier those 10 basic principles, and this is where that document and information comes out of. I basically have extracted it and kind of simplified it, but the guiding principles gets into it in a lot more, we'll call it detailed information about the guiding principles for northern housing, what was behind the idea of the guiding principles. So here's an example of the table of contents of the introduction booklet as an example. So on this particular slide, we can see here, there is the main topic was the introduction, the objectives, overview of the booklets, the audience, the principles, on and on and on. It talks about the many norths, climate zones, the housing design, and again, going down to the second one, governing structures, about authorities having jurisdiction, bylaws, inspections, and so on. Project costs and life cycle issues. And certainly, we can see on page 13, the challenges, which would include a number of extra pages also to it. So again, just kind of a quick overview of this based on the most recent information, based on the information we received from Ontario.
The reason why, if you go back to that slide, Claude, the reason why we focused on those areas is, so while the technical guide is focusing on, materials construction, there's also, key decision making, key responsibilities, and I'll use the word accountabilities to make sure things are being built properly. So again, we've been talking about the authority having jurisdiction, right? As we presented in previous webinars, that the council is the authority having jurisdiction, and it's their responsibility to ensure that homes that are being built or renovated are being done so in accordance with the building codes and building standards. So we had to really highlight that because there's still a big challenge trying to advocate the importance of this area. And again, you don't have authority having jurisdiction without having clear bylaws. Without the bylaws, you don't have proper roles responsible for inspections. So for example, how many communities allow their inspectors to issue stop work orders? So let me look at my research. So of 650 communities, I have a number of 3, call me liar, maybe 5. So we have these, capacities to comply with building codes, but then we don't have the governance structure to complement it. So if you don't have the government structure, then there's no accountability to make sure it's being built properly. So we try to talk hand in hand of you need both to move forward. Okay.
Thank you, John. So again, what are some of the key findings that we have found that are probably fairly commonplace throughout our study of these technical guides? So it certainly covers a large area of different geographies, seasonal weather patterns, numerous cultures, and certainly various, communities with a lot of different variations. Technical construction approach that works in one remote area, northern area, may not work in another remote area. So again, if we look at things such as, is there permafrost? Are we dealing with rock formations? So there's a lot of different, we'll call it things even on the ground that we're going to build on that can impact and create these differences, different types of foundation systems as one example. Those involved with the home construction must have an intimate understanding of the specific community they're working with and the challenges unique to that community and location. As John mentioned earlier, ice roads, seasonal variations. Is it too late to build the house? Is the materials going to sit in a pile? Is it going to be protected, or is it eventually going to be by next spring full of mold and wet and too far damaged to basically create and build that house from or with? And certainly variances of governance, as John kind of highlighted, administration and the decision-making process for the construction of new homes. So again, we have so many different communities and certainly various, we'll call it types of governance in the administration. Permits, are there permits? Who's inspecting, or are homes being inspected? And what are some of these differences? What are these challenges? And certainly these booklets try to address these issues. Certainly our webinars also try and reinforce the importance of reviewing, considering the value and importance of these issues. So what are some of the other key findings? To successfully design and construct a new house in the north, especially in remote communities, there are three main factors that need to be met. First, there's a need to establish a suitable and robust technical design suited for this specific community. The second issue is probably the greater challenge is the delivery of the project, starting with the construction planning through on-site construction to completion of the project. Third, the design of the new house should respect the needs and demands of the community. So these are all key main factors that are critically important. And again, these booklets try to address this. As I indicated, the webinars that we also offer, we try and reinforce this, and again, trying to instill the importance of these factors. So looking back and looking forward. So I kind of put this slide in and just kind of put it together. In the past few years, regional technical construction documents have been produced in various forms and complexity. The development and collection of these guides differ from those regional documents and is unique in the following three ways. One, the technical guide provides user-friendly illustrated booklets, as John indicated, outlining best practices for building solutions of house construction. The guides seek to cover all northern and remote regions, including the Arctic and subarctic nations and Inuit Nunavut regions. To cover this vast area, 14 overview booklets of the subregions have been developed to show the distinct challenges within each subregion. 11 technical booklets cover the house design and construction process. So you can see there's quite a collection of information we put together. The second key point here, looking back and looking forward, the technical guide appendix also presents community-based house designs developed from consulting and engaging with Indigenous communities. And again, many of these, a team of Indigenous architects completed the consultations and produced these house designs that captured the direct housing needs for First Nation communities. So these architects work with the community in developing what we could say are some really nice house designs that suit the community. The Inuit house designs presented are as-built designs developed over the years with ongoing consultation with architectural teams. So again, some of these have been built, some of them are nice designs and haven't been built. In the third point here, the technical guide series provides information on the governance and challenges of construction, certainly in the north. It should be used by everyone working in the construction industry or providing construction supplies to the north. Again, here are some of the examples. Again, some of these are from some of the previous technical guides that were put together. So just to kind of give you some general, we'll call it images and ideas. So again, examples of the Northern Boreal First Nation subregions, or another one, part two, examples of the Inuit Nunavut subregions. So again, some graphics, some plans, and what I really do like is they also break it down even into some of the plans and details. And again, these are important things when we start thinking about the good design and good development. It's just not simply a sketch or something thought out that's been used time after time after time, that these have been specifically designed by architects and engineers with a lot of thought put into how to build better homes in the north.
If we can go back to the example two, And that's creating, one more slide back, that's creating a bit of a bigger discussion for us because we like the design for accessibility. So if you see the front door, if somebody needs a ramp, the ramp could actually swing around and be completed under the carport. So there's always protection for the ramp. As we know, again, especially in the north, which is a challenge, is how do you build accessibility ramps in the north when you're dealing with permafrost, climate weather, and you can't even put a metal one up there because of the safety issues of the metal and the cold and slipping. So we like this example as a form for accessibility because of the cover. And the other picture on the next slide going forward, it also, we like that because of the carport on the example one. So just give you an idea how we're trying to push these designs for accessibility.
Okay.
Okay.
Like I mentioned, there's lots of nice information and details. And so kind of summarizing, Canada has many norths, especially when it comes to the construction of new homes. Often construction guidelines for building new homes were very generalized. Let's face it, if we take a look at it, there's not always been a successful house build in a good number of communities. Most often, they did not address the unique characters of a particular northern region, including its climates, the soil conditions, or varying building practices that should have been completed for that particular area. The overview and technical booklets were designed to specifically take into account the northernness, including the diversity of communities across the landscape of northern Canada. Again, I want to thank you. Certainly, I apologize for not getting into too much detail because as I mentioned, each of these booklets, I could have spent a full webinar on each booklet just talking about, for example, site planning and foundations, specifically to Northern Ontario versus Northern BC. So again, a lot of information there, and it's really trying to get the word out and knowledge out that you will find these technical guides very valuable for your particular area, or just maybe simply for your reference library. Again, I want to thank everyone for listening. Any questions or comments? John, any comments?
No, I think that's good. So for example, I'm just looking at, and I don't know, I'm gonna actually, I can't even send this to you for a share screen. It's such a large document. So we have one I'm looking at now, site plan. I don't know. Let me see if I can even share a screen. Oh, because let me see if I can I'm going to just shut down some of my screens here. Let's see if I can do a share. See what I get here. There we go. Share. Share.
Okay, I think it's starting to come through here, John.
Oh, there you go. So this is a booklet on site plans and foundations. And so you can see the amount of detail. They'll just go into the, so for example, here we are, we're talking about some of the old foundations, how they were just put on a house with a wooden cribbing foundation. Here we talk about housing being built with a wood frame basement and interior walls. So we go through all this detail. But what I like about it is we also provide the specs on the planning and different types of foundations. So here we're looking at house with a wood frame basement and setting out the design factors for them as well. So what are the criteria? So just go down and we'll list those below grade. So these are all drawings that we had done for our requirement for the guide. So you can sort of see here where we have the, explaining below grade, the temperature changes, freezing for several months, right? Totally different. We talk about the frost depth, which is a big issue for the north. So we go into details of which you would not get in the building code, for example, but we talk about it here. Again, I'm just going through, here we go. So here we talk about drain pipes and drainage, gravel, the basement, for foundations. So installations of weeping tiles and installing drainage pipes, and how to do it in a northern climates. So again, we're specifically talking about the north. So it just gives you a few ideas. So this here, just I'm going to whip through without making everybody sick. Let me see. So this here is
Well, that one is 44 pages in length, so that's one of the
it's one of the shorter ones.
yeah, one of the shorter ones.
Yeah, but you can sort of see the detail that we put in. So this one here is talking about let me back up here. So on space frames, right? So I know that's obviously that was a big discussion in our consultations, and we talk about space frame foundations for the north and how to set them up, how the should be used, the base that it should be on, and so we set up this whole framework. Again, why? Because in our consultations in the north, this was always one of the big discussions, how to set up a space frame. So, and we also talk about pile foundations, right? Again, what is the pile foundation? We go into detail. It's a wonderful sketch that was done for us. And so here we give an example of I think what it looks like and when it should be used in terms of climate and the type of ground. So that just gives you some ideas. Again, there's another pile foundation, and we talk about again the geotechnical studies, ground conditions, soil testing. We spend a lot of time talking about triple planning before you build. But here's an example again of a pile foundation. So just that was just the different deep foundations. And again, we kept it short and sweet because we know people don't like to read, but if you want to read, we also provide all the supporting documents here. So all the CSA standards. We talk about here's a report by Johnson, permafrost and foundations, and some other draft technical guides for adapting houses in climate and Canadian permafrost terrain. And so we substantiate our findings by providing the information here, which people can easily access. So just there you go.
Just a comment there, John. I think the other important part I like about the booklets and the documents, it's not like trying to pick up the building code and try and figure out what you need to do. I look at building codes as the legal language of how to build, whereas these documents, as we can see, as John is indicating, a lot of simple language to it, some illustrations. And by the way, this is what a house in the community looks like that's actually using it. So some very, very good examples. So I think very well put together.
Yeah. So again, we've had a big discussion, so I'll just highlight again permafrost, right? So we talk about the continuous and discontinuous permafrost and how that impacts construction practices. And so we highlight that and knowing these conditions, well, how do you build in those conditions? So we want to focus on that. And that's why our technical guide specifically targets each region. So a permafrost in Northern Ontario will be much different than another region. So we also want to highlight the difference. So what's good for Northern Ontario may not necessarily be the case for other regions because of the type of permafrost. So again, our guide sort of is based on this type of information as well as climate and other factors that impact construction practices. So Just give me another idea here. Again, so this will be available on our website. We'll send a note out to everybody. Again, while it's going back and forth, our web guy is trying to figure out how to post these large documents and make it available. So once that's done, I will send out a notice to everybody and then to go ahead and download it. And it'll be very important information for everybody to use. So I just, there we go, grade. There we go, importance of, moving the water away from the house, right?
No problem.
So,
I think Laurel, are you still there? I think Laurel had a question or a hand raised.
go ahead. I gotta stop sharing here because I can't, oh, there you go, stop sharing.
Well, I
Go ahead, Laurel.
I did have my hand raised, but you just answered the question.
Okay, thank you,
Okay.
Laurel.
Yeah, how to make everything available?
Hi, can you? Yes, that you answered. You just.
Okay.
Kind of breaking up, but I think we kind of got the idea.
Yeah, so we hope to have it available and
Though that's why I had my hand up. I was wondering where and when they would be available.
yeah, so the Northern Ontario one is available. And the other regions, we have to go back for additional funding and we will build on those as we're going forward. So we believe that once we get the additional funding for the other areas, it won't be as much of a challenge to do the first one. The first one, or the first two, was the most difficult because of all the research. So now we have the template and we have the basis so we can finish off the other ones. But that being said, there's a lot of information in the northern one which people can use.
So are they available? Is the Northern Ontario one available right now, or is that the one you were speaking of?
Yeah, no, Northern Ontario
That you
is.
said you would put it up as soon as you could.
Yeah, no, thanks, Laura. It is done. It is finished. We're just trying to figure out how to post large documents. So once I'm hoping to have that figured out by we're doing some test runs on the weekend, but hopefully by no later than within the week we'll have it up and we're sending away the links. And please download and please share with everybody.
Right,
Okay.
because there may be differences between Northern Ontario and Northern Manitoba, but I would imagine it would be largely applicable.
Correct. Absolutely correct. That's right. Absolutely. And the difference would be, for example, it might be a permafrost issue, right? It may be, different types of probably building structure. Now, Mahalo, who works with us from the NRC, if he could pipe in, he's our engineer expert that's been helping to project manage this. So if he can hear us, there he is.
Good afternoon. So a specific question or?
Yeah, so the guides, so we have the northern one done, and so if they want to use what we have, it's easily, you can adapt it to northern Manitoba, correct? There would be differences, for example, like in permafrost, maybe a little bit of on insulation, but you could probably, take good 95% of it and adopt it?
Oh, definitely. And the guides were primarily written based on using the National Building Code. And obviously most of the provinces use the National Code as a model and have some variances. Obviously, in your local region, you'll have to be careful, what are some of the differences. It could be because of available materials, the terrain, what have you, but in general, yeah, most of these, the information in the guides will be transferable.
Okay.
And actually, if I can just pipe in for one more thing, great presentation, Claude. I think you nailed it exactly, um, what the guides are there for. Something I do want to point out is when we eventually finish all the regions, and as John mentioned, that is a huge undertaking. The first one almost killed a couple people, but they're still working around, so it's good. The next ones are going to be a little bit easier to develop. And when we're done everything, actually even before we're done everything, these are living documents. They were based on and written on what current technology we know now or over the last couple of years. As codes change, as technology changes, research is carried out more on different pieces of equipment that works better in the north. As all that information comes about, these guides are going to be living, and our plan is to hopefully update them. You know, if it means having a committee put together comprised of the users, the indigenous designers, builders, what have you, and bring forward any of the issues that have come up with using these guides, things that have been forgotten or technologies that are no longer used and shouldn't be in the guides. We're going to be updating the guides accordingly. It's like the building code. Building code's updated every 5 years. Our goal is to have these guides updated as things progress. You know, I have researchers at the National Research Council that are really gung-ho about these guides. I had the HVAC researchers reviewing the HVAC guide and provide his 2 cents worth based on the research that they're currently doing up north. And they're also looking at what is in there and, okay, what are some of the gaps that we're still having, like some of the issues we're having, some of the equipment. They're going to look at that further over the years. They're going to do research on continuously improving equipment to be used up north properly. And not just someone says, oh, this is good for the cold, but then it fails after a few months because it can't handle it. That's what we want to avoid. We want something that's going to last for a very, very long time. You know, 5 to 10 years is unacceptable. We need to reach the 15, 20, 25 year mark at least with equipment, materials, what have you. So that's our ultimate goal, is to just keep these guides living and growing as we improve. And then we'll start including more stuff. Energy codes are becoming more important now. Maybe possibly going to net zero ready, which is the ultimate in building design. Things like that. Everything, as things progress, these guides will progress too. So I just want to make that point also, that this is not one and done. This is just the beginning of continuous maintenance.
Yeah, thanks. That was excellent. And you mentioned net zero. We're actually in possible talks with NRCan to provide supplements. So rather than rewriting this stuff, we add a supplements specifically looking at how do you achieve net zero buildings, and how do you do that in terms of, you know, Northern Ontario versus another region? And is it a case of installation? Is it a case of improving heat pumps? And you know, what do you do with those communities that are driven by diesel? And so there's and again, this net zero is probably a big discussion, probably the last like 2 years. And matter of fact, when we looked at all the drafts we didn't even talk about net zero. We talked about energy efficiency, but we never talked about net zero. So even before they're finished, we're not even up to date on how do these comply with net zero, or how do we add to the net zero discussion for the north. So it's a huge project, huge undertaking.
And you're right. And when the energy codes were being developed, net zero was a huge stumbling block, because what is net zero? Really, if you look at the definition of net zero, it's when you're using or you're producing as much energy as you use. So for that, you need the renewables. And the way the codes was being developed over the last few years is building towards net zero energy ready. So it's basically the best the house can be before you're going to that next step of having to have renewables to reach that net zero. So that's part of it too, because we know that having renewables in a lot of northern communities is great in some parts of the year and impossible in others. You know, when you have 23 hours of darkness, there's no point having solar panels on the roof.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's an ongoing
Yeah.
definition question that's been going on for years and is currently being worked on right now with the energy codes.
Yeah, and so we will adapt our guides to the north with this change. So again, it's a live document.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Any other further comments? Oh, no, Laura said she's not hearing everybody. I got a few notes of people not hearing everything. Let me see.
I'm kind of surprised. I've noticed that too. I don't know if it's just falling out or if it's another little glitch in the Zoom, or not Zoom, the WebEx software.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's actually, I thought this would have been the best sound ever. So, because usually mine gets a little glitchy. So, okay, well, we will make everything available and including the links. So we'll make sure we send that out to everyone. So if you have any other questions in terms of building or ideas or something, feel free to reach out to info@FNNBOA or Claude or I directly. And again, why we've been developing these is to help in the decision-making process for people who are trying to figure out how to build, what to build, and how do we build within our area. So that was the key requirement behind setting up this guide. So tomorrow is an important day for everyone. It's a day of reconciliation and recognition. So I hope everybody has good family time and good thoughts. And that will take us into Monday, where we're having Candace from the First Nation Housing Professionals Association talk about their group, and they're doing some fantastic stuff, and why it's important to get their certifications, etc. So until then, be safe, and we will talk on Monday, and we'll figure out if there's a glitch at our end in the meantime.
Thank you,
Thanks,
John.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
John.